Around 65,000 years ago, humans reached the edge of what is now Indonesia. Ahead of them lay an ocean. Beyond that ocean was an entirely unknown continent called Australia. For hundreds of thousands of years, every human journey had followed one simple rule: keep walking. But here, walking was no longer enough. Even during the Ice Age, this stretch of ocean never completely disappeared. That meant no one could simply walk from Asia to Australia. Today, people fly between Indonesia and Australia in just a few hours. Around 65,000 years ago, there were no boats with engines, no maps, and no ports. Standing on that coastline, our ancestors faced a challenge no humans had solved before. The question wasn't where to go next. They could already see the next land. The question was how to reach it. To understand this mystery, we first need to understand what the world looked like 65,000 years ago, because the world our ancestors explored looked very different from the one we know today.
Yoreva presents The Story of Human Exploration, Episode 5, The First Sea Crossing. Chapter 1, The Edge of the World. Today, Indonesia is made up of more than 17,000 islands, but 65,000 years ago, the landscape looked completely different. During the Ice Age, so much water was locked inside giant glaciers that sea levels were about 120 meters lower than today. As the oceans became lower, huge areas of land appeared above the water. Many islands that are separated today became part of one giant land mass. Scientists call this ancient land the Sunda Shelf. Today, much of it lies beneath the sea. Imagine standing on this coastline. Instead of seeing scattered islands, you would have seen one vast continent-like plain stretching toward the horizon. Animals also crossed these open landscapes, creating natural migration routes for early humans to follow. At first, this journey probably didn't feel very different from the ones humans had already completed across Asia. Day after day, generation after generation, they simply kept moving forward. Then, one day, the land suddenly ended. Beyond the water was another land. Today, we call it Australia. It was close enough to imagine reaching, but far too distant to simply walk. For the first time in history, humanity faced a barrier that no footsteps could cross. The challenge wasn't finding new land. The challenge was finding a new way to reach it. No maps existed, no written instructions. No one had ever documented a sea journey before. Everything they learned would have to come from observing nature itself. The tides rose and fell. The winds changed direction. Birds disappeared toward distant islands every morning and returned every evening. Nature was quietly revealing a path across the sea, but only to those who knew how to observe it. Could these clues lead to another continent? To answer that question, we first need to understand why this ocean never disappeared, even during the Ice Age. Chapter 2, The Ocean That Never Closed. The Ice Age connected many lands together, but one stretch of ocean refused to disappear. To understand why, imagine draining today's oceans by about 120 meters. Huge areas of shallow sea became dry land. The islands we now call Sumatra, Java, and Borneo became connected to mainland Asia. This enormous connected land is known as the Sunda Shelf. Australia was different. During the Ice Age, it was joined with New Guinea and Tasmania to form one much larger landmass. Scientists call this ancient continent Sahul. So, if Sunda and Sahul both existed, what stopped them from joining together? The answer lay beneath the sea. Unlike shallow coastal waters, these channels were so deep that lowering the sea level still wasn't enough to expose the seabed. Even at the coldest point of the Ice Age, open water still separated Asia from Australia. This natural boundary is known today as the Wallace Line. Named after the British naturalist Alfred Russel Wallace, this line marks one of the world's most remarkable biological boundaries. Many animals never crossed it naturally. Humans eventually did. That makes this one of the most important crossings in human history. But how wide was the crossing? Scientists are still debating the exact route and distances, but every leading reconstruction includes open water crossings. No matter which route people took, they had to leave the safety of the shore. For the first time, exploration meant trusting the ocean. The sea was no longer a barrier. It had become the next path forward. But what kind of boat could carry people across open water 65,000 years ago? Archaeologists haven't found a 65,000-year-old boat. Wood rarely survives for that long in tropical climates. Instead, scientists study the evidence that survived and ask what kinds of boats could have made this journey possible. The boats you are about to see are scientific reconstructions, not proven originals. Even without knowing the exact design, one fact is clear. Humans crossed this ocean successfully. The crossing was real. The mystery is how they accomplished it. To solve that mystery, researchers have spent decades rebuilding the possible technology of the first explorers. Their experiments reveal something extraordinary. The first sea crossing may have been simpler than you imagined, but it demanded planning, teamwork, and remarkable courage. Chapter 3. The First Voyage. Nobody knows exactly what the first boat looked like, but we know one thing with certainty. People reached Australia. That means someone, somewhere, solved a problem no human had solved before. The ocean itself may have provided the first idea. A floating log can carry weight. Several logs tied together can carry much more. Researchers think simple rafts made from logs, bamboo, or other natural materials may have been enough for short sea crossings. The exact design remains unknown because wood rarely survives for tens of thousands of years. So archaeologists combine many different kinds of evidence to rebuild the most likely story. Crossing the sea was probably never a journey for one person alone. Building even a simple raft required planning, cooperation, and shared knowledge. The greatest technology wasn't the raft itself. It was teamwork. The ocean also had another advantage. Many islands were still visible from one another. Instead of crossing one giant ocean, people may have traveled from island to island. Even then, some crossings still required traveling across open water where no land was visible. That meant choosing the right weather could make the difference between success and failure. Nature became their navigator. Birds often fly directly toward land when leaving their nesting areas. Ocean currents also followed predictable patterns. Instead of fighting nature, the first sailors may have worked with it. Every successful crossing became knowledge for the next journey. That knowledge could spread from one community to another. The first voyage may have taken only hours, or perhaps longer depending on the route. Scientists are still debating the details. What matters most is that the journey succeeded. For the first time, humans had reached an entirely new continent by crossing the sea. No other human journey before this one had required such a crossing. Human exploration had entered a completely new era. The sea was no longer the end of the journey. It had become the next road forward. That single idea would eventually allow humans to reach thousands of islands across the world. But first, the new arrivals had to survive in a land unlike anywhere they had ever seen. The voyage was over. The real challenge was only just beginning.
Chapter 4. A New World. Stepping onto Australia wasn't the end of the journey. It was the beginning of life in a completely new world. The land looked familiar in some ways, but many of its animals were unlike anything humans had seen before. Some of Australia's giant animals, known as megafauna, were still alive when the first people arrived. The largest of them, Diprotrodon, could grow to the size of a modern rhinoceros. Living in this environment meant learning new plants, new animals, and new survival strategies. Just as they had done in Africa and Asia, they adapted by observing nature. Australia offered fresh rivers, coastal resources, and abundant wildlife for communities that learned how to use them wisely. Over time, families spread across deserts, mountains, forests, and tropical coastlines. Within thousands of years, people had explored almost every part of the continent. How do we know this happened? Because archaeologists have uncovered remarkable evidence across Australia. One of the most important sites is Madjedbebe, located in today's Kakadu National Park in Australia's Northern Territory. Excavations at Madjedbebe have revealed stone tools, grinding stones, and pieces of ochre used as pigment. These discoveries suggest that people were not simply surviving, they were developing skills and technologies suited to their new environment. Ochre was more than just colored earth. It may have been used for art, decoration, and cultural traditions. Even today, ochre continues to hold cultural significance for many Aboriginal Australian communities. People also created shelters that protected them from Australia's changing seasons. Fire remained one of humanity's greatest tools for warmth, cooking, and managing the landscape. Knowledge passed from one generation to the next helped communities thrive across the continent. Every successful hunt, every safe water source, and every seasonal journey became part of a growing tradition. Over thousands of years, these traditions helped shape one of the world's oldest continuous cultures. The journey across the sea had lasted only a short time. Its impact would last for tens of thousands of years. Humanity had successfully crossed its first great ocean barrier. From this moment onward, oceans would no longer be impossible obstacles. One day, humans would use the same spirit of exploration to reach thousands of islands across the Pacific. But every great journey has a beginning, and this was one of humanity's earliest known voyages across open water. It changed where humans could live and what they believed was possible. Exploration was no longer limited by land. A new chapter in human history had begun. The courage to cross this ocean would inspire countless journeys that followed. The first sea crossing was more than a journey to a new land. It was proof that curiosity could carry humanity beyond the limits of the world they knew.
Chapter 5. A journey that changed human history. The first sea crossing lasted only a short time. Its impact is still with us today. For the first time, humans proved that natural barriers could be overcome through planning, observation, and cooperation. That way of thinking would shape every great exploration that followed. Long before written history, people were already solving problems that had never been solved before. No king recorded this voyage, no monument celebrated it, yet it changed the course of our species. Scientists continue to study this journey because many questions are still waiting to be answered. New discoveries may one day reveal exactly where the first explorers launched their journey, or perhaps even the route they followed across the sea. Every discovery helps us understand one of the greatest adventures in human history a little better. But one conclusion is already clear.
Humans reached Australia remarkably early in our history. They didn't wait for better technology. They made the best use of the technology they already had. Sometimes history's greatest breakthroughs begin with surprisingly simple ideas. The first sea crossing reminds us that curiosity has always been one of humanity's greatest strengths. Whenever people reached the edge of the known world, someone chose to keep exploring. That decision changed the map of the world forever. Today, millions of people call Australia home. Their story ultimately begins with one extraordinary journey across the sea. And that journey began with a single question: what lies beyond the horizon? Human history has been shaped by people willing to ask that question again and again, and every answer opened the door to another journey. Australia was no longer beyond reach. It had become part of humanity's world. But another land was becoming one of the most important crossroads in human history. A land shaped by mighty rivers, changing monsoons, and remarkable diversity. Over thousands of years, people arrived there from different directions, carrying new ideas, new skills, and new ways of life. Why did this region become one of humanity's greatest meeting places? The answer begins tens of thousands of years before the first cities appeared. It begins with the first people who entered what we now call India. What did they find? How did they survive? And why did so many later migrations pass through this land? Those questions lead us to the next chapter in humanity's story. Next episode: when did humans first reach the Indian subcontinent? We'll follow the evidence to uncover one of the world's oldest human stories, because every place on Earth has a beginning, and every journey starts with a single step.
Thank you for exploring history with Yoreva. In the next episode, we'll travel to one of the most important crossroads in human history, the Indian subcontinent. See you in the next journey.